Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Hi, Miss Kim.
Hi.
We are taking you to part 2 of this concept, this idea, Viveka Khayati. Last episode,
Viveka?
Viveka?
Mhm.
Viveka, not Viveka.
There's no
Viveka.
accent there's no accent like Viveka or Viveka, but welcome, right? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Where did I get that? I feel like I've heard it that way, and I'm like, I don't know. Okay. Viveka Khayati.
Well, actually, let me stop and say like all options then should be okay because everybody has a different intonation anyways with wording. But yeah, I mean, Viveka Khayati is the way that I had heard it. And so I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to choose how you'd like to say it.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we broke it down. We went through the definitions. We've kind of last episode we related it to our own experiences, and then we ended rather abruptly. We ran out of time. We ended with how do we wrap this back into this concept back into the teacher student relationship for the beginning practitioner, and where do we take this? What does it look like? So that's what we're doing this episode, is expanding on that idea and going from there. Yeah.
Sure. And I guess like what we want to know is like where's the center, right? What's the like sort of foundation of Viveka Khayati that we can apply to all aspects of life? Because again, yoga is a doorway into realizing how, who we are and how we feel in our bodies, number one, or one number of minutes. But I guess the concept for today's conversation would be like, yeah, let's just go back to the definition of Viveka Khayati, sort of marinate on that and discuss how it can be applicable in all aspects of our life, because that's the point of yoga, is for you to drop into your body and into the present moment and gain some self-reflection, some insight, some realization, so that you can begin to move out into the world from that perspective. And so, you know, what is Viveka Khayati based on last week's conversation?
Discerning wisdom. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Also, in my own words, I would say like seeing the truth um, for what it is without all the stories, like not using our own personal filtered lenses to see what's going on, but taking those off to see what's really happening. And then you can take it places, right? So like, what is happening? You can discern what is real versus what is maybe a response from a past experience that you have, or I have created around me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also possibly not from the past, also into the future, saying I have a judgment already about yoga, about whatever the case may be, whether it be about myself, about the room, about anything. So this discernment piece it's the opportunity for you to pull back and say, like, because I'm still me, I'm still my personality. I don't necessarily want to change all parts of me, right? But I want to have an ability to say, oh, I feel triggered in positive, negative, neutral ways. And because I've practiced this path, I have some space to decide how I have the Viveka Khayati, the discernment. And I also know that by breathing gives me more time. So I take a deep breath. I take my eye gaze a little lower. I turn into the involuted sense. Then I can create some discernment there for myself. I've also, speaking, personally, I've practiced enough to know the difference between negative and positive thoughts. And also, right, practice the idea of detaching myself from both of those experiences, because you can have positive and you can have negative, and it's always going to be there. It's not always going to be positive, but we want to actually create more of the positive in our life, which is why we want to come to yoga and learn about ourselves. So yeah, discernment and sort of being able to see through the illusions, whatever they are, whether they're our own personal chatter or the illusion of the right yoga clothing or the illusion of music or whatever the case may be. But really reflecting it back to the podcast, Viveka Khayati would be able to offer the beginning practitioner the opportunity to decide, like, does that work for me? Is that what I want? Was the class too active? I'm going to stop there because I think there's more conversation available.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first of all, one of the things that came to my mind is when you were going through the examples of what we're discerning, like the yoga clothes, the thing or the thing. Just one thing I want to throw out there is the samsara. I've been chanting the opening mantra, and samsara, hala hala, the conditioned experience too. It's not really like pertinent right now, but that's just what came to my mind as you were talking about it, is like,
What's the
having.
word afterwards? Moha Shantyaye.
Yeah.
Coming into, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good, but coming into a different place of understanding after we got rid of the poisonous hala hala.
Yes. Yes. Right. And so that's the first thing that came to mind, is just how this discernment can really help us, like you said, in all areas of our lives. And of course, we're offering this idea in the yogic realm because it does kind of start here once you start on this path. And then, yeah, I mean, from there, it's just,
Well, you first. Sorry.
No, you first. Go for it.
Are you sure? I want you to finish your thought.
I'm positive.
So my thinking is like, what we can offer in this podcast right now, off the shooting from the hip, is like, what do you want? So this will be an opportunity for the listeners to be like, yeah, what am I looking for? Okay. Or conversely, what's stopping me from showing up?
That's the one.
And then right there, you're already in Viveka Khayati. You're already having discriminating wisdom because you're choosing to stop and look at what's available or what's showing up. So right now, the beginning practitioner, whoever's listening to this podcast and is following along in the present moment with us, is probably reflecting, yeah, what do I want out of yoga? Why am I called to be there? And then, my teacher brain's like, take a moment, journal, and write that down, or like make a mental note, because you're probably going to have more than one reason, which is beautiful. So then at that point, the practitioner takes Viveka Khayati again and has discriminating wisdom and says, well, what of these three things? So like maybe one is, I'm allured to this like beauty of yoga. There's some magic there for me. Okay, that's one. I also feel like I need to move my body, and I feel like yoga would be a safe place to do that. Great. My doctor's telling me that I need to work on, stress and relaxation. Great. What gets and then conversely, right? Well, I'm too heavy, or my body doesn't move, or I'm not. Oops, that was two. I'm too big, or I'm too small. I'm not strong enough, or I'm too strong. I'm flexible, or I'm inflexible. I mean, all of these, and you can list these reasons, right? But at least then we're already in discernment. We're saying, wow, I've been able to delineate and notice the different aspects that either keep me from or bringing me into yoga. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I've taken that into myself. So now I'm actually ready to go into a room because, right, the work is within. So I know why I'm going in. Just pick one or two or whatever. Maybe you take them all in there. And then the next step, right, would be to try a class that you feel comfortable in, and then go back and see, did that fulfill the goal that I had brought in?
Right. Yep.
And that's your sort of, in my opinion, that's your sort of baseline safety, safe sort of level one, step one. Because now then we're going to talk about, did you like the class? Right? Then there's that other aspect of like, well, I liked what the teacher did. I just didn't really like the music. I really enjoyed the way that I felt so relaxed, but I was so confused with what the teacher was saying, whatever the case may be. Then that's like another level of Viveka Khayati.
Yeah.
And I want to stop there because that's a whole nother conversation that should come after this level 1 discernment piece.
Yeah.
What does that feel like after you've heard that, me share that, like what comes up?
I mean, it just feels very foundational, which is what we're essentially saying for the beginning practitioner, someone who's revisiting after, a year to 30 years of break of yoga. It's like, it's very foundational to me, and also personally very comforting because I just moved to a new place this year. And so it took me about a month to 2 months to even step into a yoga studio because I had all this stuff, all my past experiences of whatever, just were like, like, I don't know. And then I stepped into a room and completely surrendered. And I was like, okay, now I'm back. And so all of those things that kept me from stepping through the door, most of those things that kept me from stepping through the door just kind of fell off. But I also have that experience of, I just have been in the studio for so long and I only took a month or two break,
So
but
so let me interrupt you really quick because there's a key thing that I see. Like, what were the steps or what were the things that fell away? And tell the listeners about your actually embodied experience so they can have an antidotal example.
yeah.
So, and I know you well, so I'll just add in where I can to help them understand, because sometimes we're just sharing our story and people from the outside might. But yeah, what level, like, what went through your mind? What
Yeah.
was the point in the yoga class where you were able to drop the, because we'll always have sort of, one teacher told me, it's a waxing and waning of how big the stories get. Are you owned by this fear, or can the fear sort of shrink and like live in a part of you, but it doesn't drive the bus all the time? So share a little bit about that. What was your experience, not the time frame before, but the actual day that you went in, and what was the feeling, and what was the posture, what was the moment that you realized, they dropped away and I was able to, and now I'm back. Like,
Yeah.
what is that? Talk about that a little.
Great. So
It's hard.
it's hard, right? Because I have to now remember, but it's mostly I was being really picky about the classes, like the class that I want to take and the studio I wanted to take a class from. We only have a handful, like 3 around this area. And so I was just, wanted to practice a certain type of yoga or a certain style that included the philosophy and all these things that I wanted. And I found that class, but I was like, I don't know if I want to pull the trigger. And then I finally did. I was a little apprehensive.
Why were you apprehensive?
Because I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the teacher. I didn't know anything.
So you felt uncomfortable and you felt out of control about controlling the environment. Okay.
Yes,
This is
100%.
good. This is it. This is it. And this is what your yoga teacher for a beginning yoga student, if I was knowing, like, we want to make it, as if you're a beginning yoga teacher and you're going in a classroom, and I mean, look at this example, right? We have somebody who spent years in a classroom and we all still have these emotions. So make sure that, number one, us as yoga practitioners and teachers need to be really checking in with the beginning student and making sure that they are validated, acknowledged, and have their sense of agency. And also beginning yoga student out there in the public, just realize what's going on here, that these are cyclical experiences around fear, love, really baseline emotions. And so, okay, so you were in a state of little apprehension around not being able to control your environment. Keep going.
Yep. And so, I got in my car, I drove down to the studio, it's down the hill, all these things. I stepped in the door and laid my mat down and just was really quiet, right? Like, just kept to myself, was whatever. And then this teacher, the instructor, started sing chanting, which is different. I've only ever heard that form in my teachers or my yoga teacher training certification program. A guest showed up and she was doing with the thing, the harpsichord.
The Bina.
Yes. And she sings and she has like this bird-like voice. And the minute she started doing this singing, I cried. And that's when I was like, it's over for me. Here we are in the present moment. I am back. This is what I'm after.
Okay, so you had a release of your fear through a very tangible experience. You released some of that psychic knots patterning through the tears, right? And then you realize, oh, I'm back.
Yes.
Okay, tell me more. So crying is not a bad thing, right?
No. In fact, for people who want to know, we actually release stress hormones through our tear duct, through our tears. It is one of the best things. I cry any chance I get. I just accept it. It's happening.
That's a really important thing to say and have people hear.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm always looking in the classroom for the criers. I actually take it as a compliment.
Same.
Right. And being a beginning yoga student, right? And if you're more of the sensitive version, like you can tell that her and I are, you want to pay attention too to like, right, who's running the show. And if they're sensitive to that, or the new student in the room, right? Because you want to be validated. I mean, these people are providing a service for you. This is a service-oriented industry, even though it might seem as if it is a, you know, the opposite, that we need to be idolizing the teacher, which is not
the thing. It's not the thing, you guys. So,
can I just recap your thinking here? So you said you were back, and then what happened?
And then I kept going back once a week. That's what I did on Saturdays. It was an hour-and-a-half class. I kept going back. I kept crying during her singing. And then the movement was beautiful. You know, I checked myself many times. I'm like, this is not my style of yoga. I like to hold my posture and break down and cry in my posture and just expand with my breath. But it was beautiful. Every time I went to practice with her in this class, something in me changed. Like I was processing information that had been stored, and I just shoved it down all throughout the last several months. And then I stepped into this shala, and it was like, here we are, we're back. And now we get to do all the processing, all this stuff. Fast forward to like last month, I had to do the same process all over again. This time it was just about my habits. You know, like I'm one of those people where every 3 weeks, every 3 to 4 weeks, things start to fall around me. I get out of routine. I don't go to a class 1 week and then I don't return for a couple weeks. It used to be like, I mean, it all started out like 5 years, right? 5 years when you first met me. And then it was maybe almost a year. And then it was a few months. But yeah, it took me a little bit. It's one of my patterns. Like I always have to come back to it. In a lot of areas in my life, it's not just yoga. There's a lot of other things I do where it's like, we're getting to week 3 and it's really hard for me to keep going. So I really have to.
Do you redirect and reorganize that energy with compassion or judgment?
It varies. Depends on how I'm feeling that day. If I'm feeling really frustrated with myself, it's probably judgment. There is a point in time where I will back off myself and I will just acknowledge the experience and be like, oh, Jessica, like, it's time for this to happen again. We know this. Let's try again next week.
Yeah.
And get back in, you know?
That's good to hear. Yeah. That is going to be right. And when I hear you saying that, Like we all have patterns. Not my turn to share, but I have them too. And I can feel them start to come. I can like feel it start to well up. I'm like, oh, geez, by like what you said, missing a class or like doing a thing or having, you know, whatever knocks me off my most bright light, right? And then the sense of perfectionism makes me want to saboteur the whole thing. But we get better in time with yoga because that's what we're doing in yoga. If you can find the right teacher, we're literally putting ourselves in a petri dish and we're using the postures for many different reasons. One, probably to feel better in our bodies, but eventually it's going to create the sort of the environment where we can begin to see how we want to disassociate, exit the pose, not show up to class, and then bash ourselves, hide behind eating and not show up. But it's okay, actually, because every day the practice is going to be different because every day is different. And yoga is not just these postures. It is actually an applicable tool to live healthy and self-realize. And that takes an entire lifetime, or else we are ascended masters. I don't know. I've passed the age of 33, so I'm good to go. I mean, you know, so, but again, bringing it back to Viveka Khayati, all of this is what we're talking about, is being able to have discriminating wisdom. And we are in this sort of vibration of Viveka Khayati. Let me add on for the listeners what I wanted to say about your teacher in Placerville. Because this is my theory, and I've noticed it, and we are the ones we've been waiting for. And a rising tide does lift other boats. So so she, by working on herself and including her natural gift of singing, creates healing environments for people to change. Like, that's great. You know, what a beautiful thing. So when she worked on herself, she worked on the world because she actually affected you in that moment, even though it took you however many weeks or whatever to get there. That person was still just vibrating and working on themselves and holding the space. And so that is the consistency of yoga that I think beginning practitioners need to understand. Like, one class isn't going to do it. 3 weeks of class isn't going to do it. It's going to be better. 3 months of class is going to be even better. You know what I'm saying? 3 seasons, spring, summer, fall, is even better. 3 years, you're going to look back and realize that you actually created alchemy within yourself, right? Because usually we grow, or say you heal yourself from a sciatic nerve, or say you had high blood pressure and you stuck with it. You were the inner physician. You were the alchemic master in your own life. Yes, we came together in community because that's what we need. But the yogic tools have the capacity to create this sort of environment where people can change. So let's not forget that, you know, that it is important for anybody that's on their path to get into the room, because we need all the boats to start lifting, you know, the tide. And it's okay. We don't want them all to be the same. We need a diverse ocean environment, you know? So
I agree with you.
just like our potluck.
Yeah, exactly. Different dishes. We need the sides, we need the mains, the entrees, the dessert.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I think I had a thought while you were talking too, because what was it? It was, it's related, but it's not at the same time. But I think it's important because you were talking about, you know, we need people to get into the studio, and, you know, the teacher, by working on herself, helped me work on myself. Essentially, she held that space for me to do my work and to do whatever I needed to do. And I think it's just, this happened to me in one of the classes I was teaching last week, that a student expressed that if she was going to be the only one in my class, she would rather me not teach her and her go home and me go home, because she felt so bad for being the only one. And you'd be surprised at how many people will think that, because they'll look on the schedule. Most studios have the apps where you can see how many people signed up. And if they see that they're the only one, they're either going to be like, cool, private class, but a lot of them are going to have that guilt, right? Another area where Viveka Khayati can come in is like, don't make a story about it. Like, this is one of those things. It's like, are you having low self-worth? Are you feeling bad for being the only one? And that too is going to keep you from stepping in the studio that first time. And, just a reminder, my belief is that any good or balanced or instructor that's worked on their stuff long enough is going to tell you that you are worthy to be there. And we want to teach you because you showed up for yourself. And that inspires us to show up for you. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, it's crazy. Just the things that come up for the practitioner. I've felt that before. I mean, I was the only one in one of your classes, and I was like, well, we could. I mean, my shit is more like, I actually don't want to practice today, but you kept me there, and I was like, hey, let's go. But for other people, it's like, I feel bad, So I don't know. I think it's just important that there's more examples so people know what's really happening. We have more examples of what this could look like, what the stories can look like that keep you from stepping into the studio, and then maybe see what the reality is too. It's like, we want to be here for you.
Yeah. Yeah, we really do. And because we love the practice so much, and it's been so palpable, the experience of change, we want everyone to feel that way. I also want to just put in, this is not a common thought. I definitely always have sort of stepped outside of the mainstream, but like, I don't go to the popular classes because I also know that the amount of energy in there is going to take away the intimacy of my experience. I also can feel the tribal hunger. Okay. So I don't want to tell everyone not to go to the popular classes, but I would say that the more unpopular classes will probably have just as much juice. And it's interesting to think that people actually care about that, but again, we're looking at like society, like look at how long the fashion industry has been around, and every year there's a new black, but I'm pretty sure, you know what I'm saying? It's a sort of and as I've gotten older, when you do look at those groups and they're all wearing the same sort of brimmed hat these days, and they're so whatever that style is, bohemian, I'm like, but they live in the city and they're wearing the bohemian hat behind the bartending gig with their perfectly made hat. Again, I'm like, it's not Halloween. And at the same time, we're able to express ourselves exactly who we want. So there's that. But again, like, what is authentic to what does someone authentically truly need, And so can you just show up for yourself in that way? And if they're looking at numbers is silly to me. I've had it too, believe me. Oh, there's only 2 people here. It's just going to be I'm like, yeah, so intimate, and you're going to hate it. But
Yeah.
good for you, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Just a little side note there.
Definitely. So, yeah, I think, I know, I feel like that's pretty.
Yeah, so coming back to the original part of our point about for the listeners is Viveka Khayati, discriminating wisdom, discernment, what to look for when you're in a class. How is that applicable in many ways? Because there's lots of nuances in a classroom, both for the individual and for the outside environment. So seeing where we can apply that in our lives.
Right. For me, when I take Viveka Khayati out of the studio, it's really just about all the pausing. Honestly, like, I always come back to that, the pausing, because I will get triggered by just about anything. I'm really like an easygoing person, but I have things, So it's more like, right? Like, what do I want from this experience? What do I want from this day? Am I going to wake up and just be like, gosh, darn it, it's another day. I have all these things to do and I don't want to do any of them. And they're going to be hard because life is hard for me sometimes. That used to be my experience, but is that really true now? Do I have a choice now? Right. So this is where that foundation gets to be taken off the mat and put into my life. Is just, I get to look at my patterns. I get to look at what's keeping me. What'd you say? What's keeping me from stepping through the door? These things. And then, like go do them and be like, what was real? What really was that experience like? And go forward,
Right. Rather than approaching it with some, like, here's a perfect example. I have to write a cover letter. It's with athletic vocabulary. It's going to be difficult. What did I do? I have to write the entire cover letter. So I'm going to avoid it. No, I just sat down and had a lot. I was like, oh, wow, look at me swallowing the whole pizza without chewing it. Okay. I went to the buffet and I just started shoving everything into my mouth and like didn't even chew it. And it was supposed to be a cover letter there at the bottom. What did I do? I took the greatest yogic quality and took it breath by breath, right? Took the pause, sat down, just what will the opening even be? Dear, to whom? Hi. And just then it was like just enough, like you said, she sang in class. I'm back. You know what I'm saying? All I needed to do for me personally, for my personality and patterns, is I pause, slow it down, and take it. Inhale, arms up, exhale, forward fold. And it was like, okay, sit down, open up the computer, just put the composure email out there and just write dear. And that will be enough for me. Like, I know that that's all I need to do is say, open the door. And then somehow the threshold shifts for me and the field shifts. No, I did not write the entire cover letter. But what did I do? I re-regulated my system back into neutrality and actually into expansion, more towards the positive experience again, because I felt constricted and pressured. So I was able to have some discerning wisdom around that. Yeah. And because I've done enough practice to know, I knew all I needed to do was just take it step by step. And then the writing sort of opened up for me, and it's ugly, but thank God we have computers that save things. I was like, I'll come back and edit that later when I feel the upwelling again of either pressure or expansion to get back into this thing that I need to do in order to move forward in my life, XYZ. So beautiful. Little anecdotal example there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So yeah, so I guess, I would just encourage, or I guess I would ask or encourage in our comment section, maybe an example or two for the beginning practitioner, where, like you said, what are the things you want from yoga? How can yoga help you? And then what are your barriers there? Like, what are the things that keep you from stepping through the door? And then can you breathe?
That's the homework assignment. Just write that down on a piece of paper and you've already achieved Viveka Khayati. Now you get to decide what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly. So friends, do that. Do the homework assignment. And if you feel safe, you can share with us here in the comments below. You can email us at practitioners@gmail.com. Our social medias are up. You can message me out through my social media if you would like to share in any of these ways. And maybe we'll bring that to discussion next time, depending on what we get, So yeah, that's what I have. What about you?
Yeah, no, that's it. I feel like I cut you off there for a second, but it makes me, I'm sorry if you wanted to say anything else. Did you have anything? Okay. But when you think about taking those steps, yoga is an anu a little bit at a time. So we don't need to swallow. We don't, you know what I mean? Just like the buffet, maybe we come up for seconds, maybe we start with a salad, but it's little bits at a time. And so being able to recognize that you've already achieved a huge concept in yoga, which is this discriminating wisdom or discernment. Well, we get to discern how we are in this time, and as it relates to yoga, you know, creating lists and ideas, at least putting it down on paper so it's not stuck in the head,
Yeah.
you know, creating more story, but it's like, at least it's there for you to pick and choose where you want to begin to access your yoga from.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So let us know, share with us. We want to hear you. We want to build this community. Bring all your dishes so we can share next week's potluck. So
Good.
awesome. Thanks, Miss Kim.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Do you know, I'm going to let you close it, but are we headed in a certain direction? Do they need to know, or we have not? Yeah,
I don't
we're
think they
staying in
need
the moment.
They don't need to know. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll get there when we get there. But I have ideas, but it's surprise. So that's what I got. Awesome. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being an inspiration for this idea and helping us dive into it, excavate it, and then relate it to our own path and how we can move forward with Viveka Khayati. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And we will see you next time.
Good.
Awesome. Alrighty. We'll see you all next time. Don't forget to comment and have a great week.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.